Okay, so I want to talk about a very important subject, loneliness. Um, I think it is common sense and it is obvious that the need for company, and this isn't necessarily romantic company, it's just general human company, is deeply entrenched in the human psyche. We are by nature social beings. This is something that has been true for millenniums. Of course, some people are very happy on their own. That's not to say everyone thinks the same way, because there are people who are genuinely quite solitary individuals, and that's fine. If it makes them happy, that's fine. But I think it is fair to say that most people have that fundamental sense of wanting some sort of belonging or empathy with others, or simply being around others. I'm currently in Scotland, in Dumfries and Galloway, which I mentioned in the past few videos, with my family, my parents, my younger sister, um, my sister-in-law, my niece and nephew. Um, and I've had a good time. It's been a nice Christmas. But I'm also acutely aware that there are people out there who don't have that experience, and this is something that a lot of charities do good work for this over Christmas, like Help the Aged. We actually Age UK, as it now is, does a lot of good work with this, especially for elderly people. Often in the case of people in their 80s and 90s, their immediate family has passed away. I will say one thing actually in relation to that. And I don't want people to misinterpret this as propaganda or something, but um, I often go to church services around Christmas time because of my father's job. He's an Episcopalian minister. I often find older people, church is actually a good social function for them. Leave aside the religious aspect, it's actually a good social place. And I often wonder, well, people of a similar age may who don't go to church may not necessarily have that connection. So I think that's a good thing. And I imagine it's similar in mosques and temples and synagogues for all people of those congregations. Um, but I just want to talk briefly about some experiences I've had in my life where I have been lonely. Also, another context to this is that I was speaking to a friend recently, and she was going through a difficult time. She's Chinese, she lives in Vietnam, good friend of mine. I just really wished I was beside her. I was talking to her online, and she was really down because she just felt lonely. Things aren't going quite so well in her life. So, as a friend, I obviously care for her, and but communicating online just isn't the same thing. It's better than nothing. Can be better than nothing, especially if you have a face-to-face video conversation. But um, what I find is that people often can't even explain what it is they're looking for. Sometimes it's simple communication. It's not necessarily anything specific that they want. Sometimes that just basic being around another person can be good. That's not to say that we don't need our own space. Goodness knows. Most people, most normal people, I guess, would definitely want their own space as well. And it can be stressful and lead to frustrations and tensions if we don't get our own space. Anyway, about 11 years ago, I was at the big Live 8 concert in London. That was part of the Met Poverty History campaign organised by Bob Geldof and many other people. Anyway, it was a very memorable event, but my only regret with that was that I was on my own. And I'm happy that I went. I actually got a free text to go. I mean, it was a memorable event, and I did feel like it was part of history, but, some of the most famous people in the world were there. Um, but I do feel that I would have been happier had I had company in some way. And it got to a point where I was even making small talk with strangers because I have this tendency to get pretty lonely when I'm traveling. I admit that's fragility of mine that I want to overcome. But anyway, to cut a long story short, I missed my train that night because London was so busy that it took a long time to get to King's Cross Station. I had to sleep rough in King's Cross Station. It was just a long, long night. And I remember at one point when I was kind of wandering around central London, the tube had been shut down at that point. I kind of wandered into Westminster now. In the early hours of the morning, the Westminster area around the Houses of Parliament gets pretty quiet actually. And I remember I felt a slight foreboding, in fact, slight unease. So I went to Leicester Square, or actually Trafalgar Square, simply to be around humanity, total strangers. And it sort of worked a little bit. Of course, loneliness isn't always in remote places. Very often, the worst loneliness is in a crowded room or in a big city. Um, and I've experienced that a few times. The same thing happened in Paris. I had meant to meet a friend, but she got caught up with work or something. And anyway, I was there for a day or two. And again, that strong feeling of loneliness set in. At the time, I was staying with a friend in Le Mans, which is about 3 4 hour train journey, but she wasn't there. She was back in Le Mans, and I could speak to her by phone. But it just again that feeling of being in a big city, especially a big romantic city. Again, it happened in Rome. So this is something I've experienced a lot, especially when traveling. And it's kind of a bittersweet for me because I love traveling. I love seeing the world. I love seeing places. Ironically, it was when I was in the other side of the world in China that I felt that less. And I think the reason being is that I knew people across China. Um, in most big cities, not every big city, but even in Changsha, when I visited Changsha, I didn't know anyone there, but I found locals to be very friendly, especially young Chinese people. They tend to be, they'll go out of their way to help foreigners, and I really appreciate that. So I made new friends, friends I'm still in touch with, simply young students who took it on themselves to show me around. And anyway, there isn't really any strong message with this video, it's just kind of state the obvious, but that's it. Often loneliness comes in certain circumstances when we're traveling, because I find I actually live on my own at the moment in the northeast of England, in Sunderland to be precise, and I'm actually not that unhappy. It's not, I had always thought because of the circumstances of my life that would be very challenging, but actually it's okay. The traveling is a different story. When I travel, it does get to me, and that's something I hope I can kind of toughen up on, I guess. Because inevitably there's times in life we simply can't be around other people. Of course, it's a double-edged sword because when you travel, you can't dictate, if you're on holiday or especially if it's, not a partner, you have to appreciate what the other person will want to see. And for example, you may want to see Museum A, they may want to see Shopping Centre B. So sometimes there's that aspect, and I suppose being on your own gives you more independence and flexibility. But the downside is that sentimental thing where, yeah, you just sometimes want to share the experience with someone. So let me know your thoughts. Where do you think loneliness strikes hardest? In what sort of circumstances? And if you want to, feel free to share an experience of loneliness you may have had. It is something I've experienced quite a lot in life. For a long time, I found being single extremely hard. I've never enjoyed being single, to be quite honest. And I'm single now. I don't particularly like it. Hopefully, I'll find a lady in the new year. But um, again, that's something that goes up and down. There's been times in my life it's been harder, times not so hard. So let me know your thoughts. Yeah, it's something I've experienced a lot in London and Paris and Rome, but not so much in China because I had connections there. Um, Let me know your experience, and thanks for watching.